This episode is sponsored by Kiteworks. Legacy managed file transfer tools are dated and lack the security that today's remote workforce demands. Companies that continue relying on outdated technology put their sensitive data at risk. The level of functionality and integration on Kiteworks' world-class secure file sharing and email platform is often limited to traditional MFT servers. Step into the future of secure managed file transfer with Kiteworks. Visit kiteworks.com to get started. That's kiteworks.com to get started. Hello, everyone. This is your host, Manoj Tandon. Welcome to another episode of Dark Rhino Security Confidential. And today we are glad to welcome back another alum who's appeared on our show before, Mr. Aaron Painter. And for those of you who don't remember, we'll put a link into the prior episode. Please go check it out. He's a great guy. He's the CEO of Nametag Inc. He's been in the cybersecurity business forever. He was an executive at Microsoft in a prior life. He's an author. He wrote the book Loyal. And we're just glad that he's here, and we want to hear his thoughts and ideas on trends that are coming up. So stay tuned for this conversation. And as I might want to remind you folks, this is a lot of work and we appreciate you folks listening, but we always love a little bit of love. Smash and like the subscribe button. Leave your comments below. We'll be sure to answer them. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Manoj. It's really great to be back. I had so much fun in our holiday episode just in late December. And so it's really an honor to be back.
It's an honor to have you back. And boy, since December, that was 6 months ago. What's changed in the world, in your world, in high tech? 6 months might as well be 6 years. So,
yeah, I think that's fair. It's lots happened in the world, and lots happened in the market, particularly in cyber. Trends that we saw sort of the end of last year have unfortunately only accelerated for the worse, and particularly around these vulnerabilities related to social engineering. These bad actors are exploiting vulnerabilities in humans and how we do things. And it's that when they find the technological limitations of a product or technology, they're trying to socially engineer their way into taking over accounts. And armed now with deepfakes in particular and Gen AI tools, they are just equipped with a sort of an unprecedented new level of technology that they can use to sort of wreak havoc and take over net companies, deposit ransomware, lead to data exfiltrations and other things.
It leads to all kinds of stuff. I mean, we are actually in an incident response right now with someone who willingly sent someone money, because it was good old fashioned social engineering, understanding the steps involved, mimicking credibility, and asking for cash. Now, in that case, deepfakes weren't involved, but I guess you could call them a deepfake because who they were imitating was a client that exists, but and you're right, exploiting processes. That is something that every company, every one of our listeners should absolutely take heed on and look at your critical processes, especially where money is to be exchanged or something intellectual property is to be exchanged, and make sure that you've got that nailed down so you don't get hit with social engineering. But now deep fakes, where does that take us? So the case I'm talking about is human fakes, right? Deep fakes, how does that work?
Well, let's talk about what a deepfake is. It's a term that was allegedly coined by a user on Reddit in 2017, 2018. Okay. And at the time, it had to do with this concept of using technology to create synthetic images or videos of, at the time, it was celebrities. It was sort of for inappropriate content. It was putting people's faces on different bodies and making it seem as if it was, celebrity doing something that was sort of scandalous or, appealing to some. And it unfortunately only expanded from there. And it's partly because the Gen AI tools, we best know by ChatGPT, but, there are a variety of different tools out there that have gotten so good at both voice and video manipulation that it's now incredibly easy. I mean, it almost as easy as it is to, make your own home video and, to varying degrees, getting a video editor, downloading that and making your home movie. It's as easy to make a deep fake. And with very limited information, I think last year, some researchers at Microsoft found a way with voice, with only a 3-second audio clip of someone making even arbitrary statements. It's no longer 20 minutes, read this set script.
Okay.
It's, taking someone's podcast clip or social media clip or any sort of voice print that might be out there. And you're able to synthesize and recreate someone's voice. The more material you have, the better it gets. Oh my goodness, we have entered a completely new era of how deepfakes are being used for impersonation.
So, it's interesting. A few points on this that I want to kind of walk through. And for, in real world examples, there was a case in Hong Kong where a banker gave up $25 million based on a deepfake Zoom meeting. So, Aaron, what you're saying is absolutely spot on. But now, when we get into the technical details, we had a gentleman on here who's the CEO of the company that did, I don't know if you remember Top Gun, right? The new one. And Val Kilmer's voice, they had to mimic that because he actually had, I believe he had throat cancer. I hope I got that fact right. So they actually had to recreate his voice for him to speak in the movie. And what this gentleman described was to really get it right, it's an enormous amount of compute power. And it takes an enormous amount of time on voice artists to get that dialed in to where it becomes believable for you and me in a movie theater.
Yeah.
Are you saying that that's gone away now? Has it even advanced to the point where it doesn't take a whole bunch of people and you could do it online?
Yeah, I think the pace of that, I don't know exactly when that movie was created, but the pace of change in just the last few years, frankly, down to the months in the sophistication of these tools is almost unprecedented. I mean, it's the accelerated availability of computing. Cloud computing brought us this capability to process large-scale data sets, and large-scale data sets are what underline Gen AI and ultimately the creation of deepfakes.
But now that requires money, though. There's a lot of cost involved with it. So if I was going to replicate somebody on a deep fake, doing something salacious, whatever, it's whatever sells. I would imagine that that's going to take a lot of compute power. And for me, as the perpetrator, there would be a huge amount of cost involved with it.
Yeah, it's true. And so you get into the separate argument about quantum computing and things like that down the road. But it comes down to how big of a fraud are you trying to perpetrate. And by the way, in many scenarios, you actually don't need the ultra high fidelity will look great in a large movie screen and be the continuation of what was filmed in HD, et cetera, et cetera. That's right. A very high caliber need in a way. I mean, think if you saw a blurry, fuzzy video of someone saying something that you were shocked that they said that could be reputation destroying, company impacting, other things, that might not even need to be that high fidelity to actually cause significant social, business, reputational damage.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're looking at a TikTok video and you're putting it on your Android or iPhone device, the speakers on those are crap anyways, right? So
we find there's actually a lot of benefits to mobile devices, particularly one way that we counter deepfakes being able to be used is by some of the advanced technology in mobile devices.
Oh, please tell us. Yeah.
And that's sort of the contrast is, deepfakes, you can make simple ones, you can make more advanced ones, but the technology to do it's gotten easier and it's getting cheaper and better by the day. So if we talk about deepfakes, it's kind of interesting that the general response from the big tech companies today is to focus on technology that they call watermarking. And watermarking essentially is, having some sort of attestation. Think of it almost as the spirit of what, crypto was trying to do. Is there a custody chain? Do we know that this was the original source? Is this the song that was made by the legitimate artist? This watermarking technology is being used. So Microsoft and others are offering it for things like, the White House. When the White House wants to be able to put out a video from the president, they want to be able to say, this has been watermarked. It's officially from the White House. So, okay, there are clear use cases when it might be nice to know this came from an official source. So total side note, but very timely, President Biden's decision not to run for re-election,
Right.
one of the discussions that popped out was, hey, he seemed to have written this on different letterhead, and maybe the signature wasn't his. I mean, that level on a letter that was shared. But imagine, let's say it was a video clip of the president. You would want the same thing. You maybe would want the White House to watermark it, say this officially came from us. The challenge of watermarking is if you're a bad actor, you can just simply use tools that don't offer watermarking. And for a lot of use cases, you might not need it to be watermarked to have something that's suspicious, right, and yet of high quality caliber.
Well, and how long will it be before they figure out how to watermark it anyways? None of these technologies, if you look at the recording industry, when with Blu-ray and DVD, they tried to prevent people from copying those things and the encryption. None of that stuff really worked.
I agree. I don't think it's a winning strategy, but it's sort of the leading one that's being proposed today. So then you get into this concept of what people often call deepfake detection. I don't know, a bunch of 20 companies out there that are running, basically they're creating AI models to detect, is an AI model being used to impersonate someone? And it's interesting. I feel though, also a losing path. I think that is an arms race, between one AI and the other AI, and someone's going to always be slightly better. More often than not, the bad actor might be slightly ahead of the good actor, things like that. And so I advocate for moving beyond deepfake detection to really thinking about deepfake prevention. Okay. So then it's helpful to understand the key ways that a deepfake is used. And there really are two ways. Everyone can get kind of a crash course today on deepfakes.
Yeah, please.
Well, one of them is what's called an injection attack. And an injection attack is when you you essentially insert a false video feed, or you sort of trick what the source is that's projecting an image. The best way to understand this would be if you used a Zoom or a Teams call and you literally chose a different video or microphone, you are essentially injecting some other material or a different source into that video call. This is what happened primarily in the Hong Kong incident you read.
Oh, okay.
So it was that simple, where we thought it was a financial services firm. It's since come public. It was more of a design and architecture firm. But someone claiming to be the CFO was in London. The finance controller was in Hong Kong. The CFO reached out to the controller and said, I need you to make these series of wire transfers. The controller was a bit suspicious. The CFO said, hey, a bunch of the leadership team, we're on a video call right now. Here's a link. Why don't you join? Makes sense. The controller clicked, joined the link, and saw people on that call speaking that were people on the leadership team that they recognized. But it turned out that each of the boxes on that video call were essentially deepfake emulators, or pieces of software that were conducting sort of real-time deepfakes. And as astounding as that is, these video calling platforms were not built to prevent against that, right? They make it easy to select a camera or microphone. So you literally just select your emulator software and you're projecting into that call as if, that person is real life, but it's actually a piece of software projecting a false image of that person. That's an injection attack. Okay. The other key piece of it is what's called a presentation attack. Presentation attack is when you hold up to a camera, let's say a fake photo that you made, a piece of printed paper, maybe a photo or video that was manipulated or is a deep fake, or you wear a three-dimensional mask, Mission Impossible style, trying to present yourself as someone else. That's a presentation attack. Those are the two leading ways. When you talk to, and we do, the white hat hackers out there that are purposely trying to show companies how they're vulnerable and they're deploying deepfake attacks, they are doing it through one of these two ways, most common of which is injection attacks, because it's so easy. Today's infrastructure wasn't.
I would imagine that none of the APIs, the calls are open. You can just do it. There's no.
That's right. It's surprisingly easy, right? Again, like the video calling platform example. And this is really relevant because if you think about, we talked about in December, this concept that people are using social engineering to take over people's accounts, like what happened at MGM. You call the help desk, you say you're the user, the employee, or it's your customer account, you're locked out of MFA. The help desk rep doesn't have good tools. They ask you a few security questions, and then they do their best from there. The recommendation from companies like Okta, who provide the MFA technology, after the MGM attack was exactly that. It was, you should be doing what they call visual verification. They recommended you get on a video call and see the person that you're speaking with and make sure that they're the right one. But if it's now so easy to do things like what we saw in Hong Kong and use these deepfake technologies,
that's not going to work.
It's a whole new chapter. It's just giving these bad actors more advanced tools to further this goal of social engineering.
Yeah, which gets back to the, I mean, it's the central problem of how do you verify the identity?
That's our argument, which is sort of what gave birth to Nametag 4 years ago, and we now spend all of our time and energy is how do you verify who someone is behind a screen? How do you verify that they're human, and then ideally which human they are? And so I advocate for a world when you think about content uploads and others, it's going to be very difficult, like you said, to trust watermarking or to trust the file that was uploaded. So let's shift accountability to being sure we know who is uploading the content. If we can do secure identity verification of the people providing the content, sharing it, uploading it, posting it, even if you operate under a pseudonym or an alias, I would argue that trusted platforms know their members and they have a responsibility to know the authentic identity of the person behind that screen if they're going to create a community where the content on it can be trusted.
Yeah. So, but what would be the mechanics of that?
Yeah, one of the things that we invented in Nametag was doing the same flow that you might do when you open a bank account. It's often known as a know your customer flow. You basically scan your ID and you take a selfie. But we found that exists primarily today, 100% prior to Nametag, in a web browser. And in a web browser, it's a lot like that video call. It is very easy to select a different feed. You could presumably go to GPT and say, here's my photo, make me a California driver's license, save as PDF. And then there's often an upload PDF button. They weren't made to stop frauds. Or for security. They were made for regulatory compliance, the checkbox process.
Yeah.
We do the same end user experience, but we do it on a mobile device. And it turns out if you ask someone to scan their ID and take a selfie exclusively on a mobile phone in the way that we're able to do it, you get a wildly different experience. It's faster, it's better for the user, but it's incredibly more secure.
Why?
Because we're able to work. Yeah. Well, one of the neat things about the mobile platforms is that apps that operate, think of the Apple sort of walled garden.
Yep.
The app is secure. So Apple has made sure that roughly the code in that app is secure when they allow you to download it from their store. And then once you have an app on a device, we have a unique way of deploying an app. But once you have an app on a device, it has a cryptographic connection with the hardware itself, which means to do something like an injection attack, like on those video calls, you would actually have to break the encryption that Apple has on that mobile phone, which is not impossible, but it is wildly difficult to do as a hurdle. So we know, for example, that when we're conducting that identity scan, scanning your ID and taking a selfie, we're using the cameras on the device that are giving us real-time information captured at that moment, not some injected video feed or something else. And with it, we get all this incredibly rich device telemetry. So for example, you use a Face ID camera maybe on your iPhone. We're able to use the same camera, not for Face ID, but to take that selfie. So we get a three-dimensional image of the person with movement associated with it to be able to match back to that government ID photo. So when you think about a presentation attack, we have these really rich sets of data that we're able to use to analyze it. When you think of the injection attack, you have the cryptographic benefits of the hardware and Apple's ecosystem to protect against someone using an injection attack.
And what would be the people where their facial features changed because they lost a lot of weight, plastic surgery, disease, whatever the case may be?
It's a great point. So one of those, we think of that as the biometric element. So we actually able to use cryptography, we're able to use biometrics, we're able to use AI, all in defeating this concept of a deep fake. But biometrically, it's very interesting. When you run a biometric face match between two given photos, so let's say the selfie that you capture and the government ID photo, we get back a confidence score. We don't store the biometric data, we don't hold it, but we get back a score to say, how do these two things match? And amazingly, even with significant aging, the features of the bone structure of a person's face, largely after they've gone through, call it puberty or become an adult, are consistent. And so they don't, your skin might change, it might lag, you might look very different in a profile photo, over periods of decades, but the bone structure of your face is actually remarkably consistent. And it allows us to get back a very high confidence score.
Wow. I didn't know that. I saw there was, I can't remember where, but there was on these devices, like one of the things they said was the most secure way to do this visual recognition would be is if you can get a blood flow map or a heat map of the face, because that stays very, like you could even tell between identical twins, you could tell a difference by the heat signatures that are between the two twins, because there's always a slight variation where an identical twin would fool everything else, but that's like the ultimate. But apparently, it's a super expensive technology to deploy.
Yeah, it turns out there is a lot of very expensive, super advanced technology in those mobile phones that we're able to take advantage of. And even that 3D camera that operates Face ID is incredibly rich. We actually offer our customers, we show them behind the scenes with the right privacy settings enabled for certain users. We sort of show them what looks like a heat mapped index of their face.
Really?
And all that three-dimensional photo is captured. It's super cool. But it's split seconds. I mean, as an end user, it's just fast. You don't realize what's going on. You do from a sharing perspective and awareness and consent. But it's the level of security that we're able to extract from taking that very quick. It's what the Face ID camera uses every day. Is an incredible benefit, coupled with a whole bunch of other sensors and things and data we're able to extract from the phone. You're just able to get this really secure experience to verify who someone is. And
have you tried this with these high fidelity masks, like the Mission Impossible style stuff?
Yeah, it turns out you combine different data sets. And so, the three-dimensional camera is one, but there are a lot of other features in that mobile phone. And without going into too much detail, some of it's sort of patented trade secret stuff, but there are a lot of other things that we can.
Oh, that's all the good stuff.
That come together. Yes. They come together to give us that assurance.
That's, and have you incorporated this into Nametag?
Yeah, today it's there. Several of our patents already have kind of come through, and the technology is there. And frankly, we're just constantly innovating. We're finding new ways, new models to build, new ways to compute data that keep us, frankly, several steps ahead of where we're seeing fraudsters. It's actually interesting. We have one, maybe now is the moment, but we've been trying to decide sort of how public to be with one particularly persistent fraudster, and we've stopped them technically all the time. I mean, they consistently try. They've changed names. They've tried fake ID. They've tried all these things. And we know it's them. Part of our technology prevents that. We have a network of known fraudsters that continues to grow, and that's just how it works. But because they haven't been able to defeat us technically, they have taken to try and social engineer us as a company.
Oh.
So this fraudster now continues to try LinkedIn posts, emails under different names to our support channels, emailing me directly, consistently, oh, things aren't working. Your product must be broken. I just need help. Somebody help me, please. Like, I can't get this verification done. We're very tight. We know exactly what's happening. We know who this person is, but they failed technically because our tech is able to stop it. And so now they move to literally trying to social engineer us. And it's just fascinating to watch this journey because it's what we help our customers do. We help them have more advanced technical solutions to prevent social engineering. But this fraudster couldn't defeat that, so he's moved to try and social engineer us. It's wild.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor, Kiteworks. Federal agencies and contractors must adopt the NSA's robust zero trust data security model to combat escalating cyber threats. Kiteworks provides the comprehensive capabilities needed to reach the highest zero trust data pillar maturity levels defined by the NSA. Elevate your data security posture to meet escalating threats and stringent federal guidelines with Kiteworks.com to learn how Kiteworks can accelerate your journey to NSA's zero trust data pillar maturity. That's Kiteworks.com. Now, do you see, like today on the iPhone, this is there, but on your cheaper Android devices, which are ubiquitous. I mean, there's some really cool Android devices, but if you look at the global map, like I can tell you, like in India, most people are not buying a $1,500 iPhone. The average person there is spending $30 on a cheap Android device. Is the same capability in those as it is in?
They're slightly different, but yeah, we work very well across both Android and iOS today. We do require that the Android user is using something like the Play Store. We require some sense of what Google provides, for example, in allowing you to download that app, provides what's called attestation, and so it is sort of a security feature. So if someone has a jailbroken device, meaning they've sort of physically broken it. Not physically, they've broken the software such that
Yep.
they can do other things on it. Like actually an authenticator app. Most authenticator apps also don't work on a jailbroken device. We don't work the same way either. We require some of those security features. But India is actually a very unique case, particularly because of Aadhaar. India is wildly advanced in having a digital identity platform that lets us do even more advanced things. And so our experience for a user in India is actually slightly different because we're able to benefit from some of the platform features that the government's put in place.
That's interesting to know. So are you guys actively being used over there?
Yeah, very actively. We work today with 12,000 identity types, I think, most recently. But India in particular is where countries are adopting digital identity platforms increasingly. We monitor this very closely. They are at various stages of development. Some U.S. states are trying to adopt digital driver's license and things. They're often at very, very early stages. We need our technology to be universal because we can't wait for these things to come along to be able to provide the assurance that we need. So we created technology that works with what people have today. Typically, a driver's license, identity card, a passport, something that's issued by the government. And we work really well with that. But when countries do make good advances in these digital platforms, we're trying to integrate them into the experience. And India is just the best example of it today.
Oh, I only bring that up because there's massive amounts of fraud going on over there, right? And
Yes.
and a lot of it centers around identity, that's why that was more of a curiosity question than anything else. But
Yeah,
what do you see with Europe now mandating that European iPhone users have a way to get other apps, so you no longer have the attestation of the App Store? So now everybody will be. Is that going to be affecting you folks?
No, we're following that pretty closely. There are definitely some DMA and other restrictions on Apple and things that are changing a bit. But today we work super well across the European demographics. And I think one of the other interesting things is the European digital wallets that are starting to emerge and some identity standards that Europe is starting to put into place. We're a few years out on seeing most of those land, but it's exciting that they're really innovating there.
I'm curious. You brought up the camera and the amount of data that is available. Give us a little bit more deep insight. I'm not asking you to divulge the trade secret here, but
Yeah.
I would love to. You should make a video about that. Like what all is available out of this device here.
Yeah, there's a lot. You just think about what powers a lot of the experiences you have on your mobile device today. I think Face ID unlocks your phone. You could, there's a gyroscope to turn from horizontal to vertical viewpoints. There's so much in there. The secure enclave that allows the attestation storage of encryption keys. There are a lot of just wonderfully advanced features in there. And, they go back actually several versions of the OS and very cross compatibility in hardware. So we were excited to actually build something that took advantage of the latest, sort of toys as we think of them, but really advanced security features in mobile phones. It's a huge leap in what can be possible in identity security.
So what do you see the deepfake guys doing then? They're not going to take this lying down.
Well, it changes the architecture of it. That's why I don't believe in this detection concept. It's an angle, but I believe in prevention, right? I believe in stopping the way that a deepfake is deployed. And if you can do that, then you're in a much stronger position. And so much of the commentary today is on watermarking and on deepfake detection. Does AI detect this is AI? And there are some use cases where that's particularly relevant and maybe is sufficient. But when it comes to identity, when it comes to making sure you know who a person is, are they human? We simply need new tools. We're trying to be very innovative and create new ones. But I'll give you another classic example. CAPTCHA. CAPTCHA, reCAPTCHA, like it's an experience we all do to prove you're human. But today with Gen AI, you can defeat it. And then there are other interesting examples where if Gen AI can't defeat it, it's hiring a human, through different platforms basically that allow you to go and, hire humans to do basic tasks. And they're having a human defeat the CAPTCHA. So it's this concept of are you human by checking the box or picking which have motorcycles and so forth.
I just did the other day. We've all done it.
We probably all haven't hired people, but there's a I would think the good team at OpenAI, for example. I think they talked about this early before maybe it was 3.5 came out, where one of the scenarios they actually had the GPT went and hired someone to go defeat the CAPTCHA. And it's really interesting. The human they hired said, what are you, a bot or something? Like, why can't you do this? And it said, no, I'm visually impaired, which
Oh,
was brilliant, right? And so the human was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm helping out this visually impaired person. And, we defeated the CAPTCHA and the bot was able to proceed. So it's just wild.
well, I mean, it's always been a cat and mouse game, right? Someone's trying to up the other, and this evolution is going to continue. But at the core of it, the base issue of the identity doesn't change. Now, have you guys taken ever any lessons from our Strategic Air Command and how they manage communications with our nuclear arsenal? I mean, that's a super secure system.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with some of the advanced things they might be doing. I'm sure those are really clever, and that's just not an area that we've role modeled. Maybe you know more. I'd love to learn. But
Oh, there's I don't know all of it by any stretch of the imagination, but just from guests on the show and talks, there is an extensive process to verification of the identity. Chief amongst them is that multiple people on either side of that phone call have to visually say, yeah, that is Aaron. Hey, that is Manoj. So if we're sitting in the same room, it's hard to deep fake me or to deep fake you.
right,
Right. So there's a bit of a buddy system thing involved there, but on a more, I guess, on really big transactions or things where identity becomes critical, I don't know if there's lessons there for people to take from, because I think MFA, while it is a necessity and it is absolutely, it's like brushing your teeth. It's good hygiene. I can think of about 4 or 5 ways to defeat it. And I'm not giving them out because I don't want to be that guy that said, oh, yeah.
well, there's one that's super common. That's why I think it started our conversation today, which is social engineering.
Yeah.
MFA is, you're right. It's like hygiene. It's necessary, but MFA is only as secure as the reset process. And if you can simply call and say, the problem was there has long since been a forgot my password button on a website. But when you added MFA, there was no such button anymore. It became call the help desk. And so if the way is you can call and simply say that you are the owner of that account and you are locked out, then all your efforts in MFA are no longer effective. They're necessary. It's a start, but it just shifts the attack vector to social engineering opportunities. And now, particularly in healthcare at the moment, is one of the most wild we're seeing. But FFA, FBI, HHS, CISA, we have so many warnings from government organizations spending a lot of time with healthcare these days. And the government has been really rightful over the last several months, increasing the pulse of saying, hey, this is happening. Healthcare organizations are being socially engineered. You need to be careful, because that is the way that people are taking over accounts today. It's wild. We are really in a new era.
It's also a social situation over there. In the healthcare companies, most of those employees are busy doing a very singular myopic task. And I don't know, I guess this gets to the social aspect of this, those people to think, by the way, this person that's asking you to do this, you better verify who they are, right? And really verify who they are, because they're going to think, well, I got like 800 people in line. I got to get going, right?
And that's I think your reference back to the nuclear code sort of thing. The concept security is always this balance between friction and security, and how much friction can my users tolerate? Am I getting enough security value out of it? In some cases, you might want an enormous amount of friction. Maybe the nuclear code example. I'm not in that field, but I would imagine someone would also say, yeah, but it's still got to be able to get done in a reasonable amount of time, because we might be in a urgent response situation. Right. Healthcare is a classic thing where you might be delivering critical patient care. And so, you have to kind of be low friction, but you're also protecting critical patient data and often critical infrastructure, because the tools that we use to deliver healthcare are increasingly digital. And so you have to find that same balance. How do you deliver critical care and offer critical security protection? And this balance between user friction or frustration and the security benefit is the dilemma of our industry. We think we found a really savvy way to do that, where you can get high security and low friction. But that's a decision that everyone sort of has to balance. Today, answering security questions people think of as low friction. For many folks, it's not. Those are hard questions to answer. CAPTCHA, surprisingly, is not that easy sometimes, filling out those boxes and which one's which and getting it wrong 2 or 3 times. But those are all efforts that are meant to be low friction for some high value benefit. Today, they're neither.
And what are you folks doing in healthcare?
Our core experience, averages 23 seconds for the first time, single seconds on the second time. So, we've tried to make it really fast, very limited number of clicks. We've developed all our own technology around auto capture and just making it fast and seamless for an end user. So it's pretty slick, but yet it's very high fidelity.
Wow. Yeah. But where, somewhere in this, don't you think the government should have some policy changes regarding our identities? And I'm going to pick on one. This is a pet peeve of mine. You go into a doctor's office, they all want your social security number. And legally, they can't actually ask for it. Only a bank and an employer can actually ask for that legally. And I always tell the listeners on the show, never give it, just refuse it, and then it's a real pain for them, but they're going to have to assign you a unique identifier. But I guess, given that every American's identity has been stolen at this point, I think that's a lost cause. All of Aaron, I'm sure your social security address, it's all out there, right? Somewhere. We, as an individual who want to practice good security hygiene, really I can't change my social security number. I can't change my identity with credit providers, right? Is there not a mechanism like we have with Apple Pay? And I'm oversimplifying this, so forgive me for the stupidity of this question, but that, like when you use Apple Pay, your actual credit card data is never really provided. It's all obfuscated, right? Can we not do that in other settings and protect our identities where we're giving you anonymized information, but it was verified by the original identity that this is in fact the correct data?
Yeah, there are a lot of technological solutions to some of those. The issues often are much more social and adoption related. I think particularly in the US, one of the issues around going to a doctor with a social security number is insurance. And so that creates the common language between the provider and the insurer to try and get some sort of coverage for that, let's say, visit. And there's actually been a law that's created about quite recently from sort of a member of Congress in this space, going back decades now, that there was intentional design to stop portability of medical records for what was seen then as a privacy benefit. Now in our world of interconnected networks, we might want them to be portability. I went to one doctor and it's a different system. I want to, be able to make it accessible somewhere else. But the systems today aren't really well designed to solve for that. And they don't have good ways to verify identity. So, the concept that, today's requirements actually often are your birth date, right? Yep. Or the last 4 of a social. And these things, you're right, they're insufficient. In today's world, that information, like you say, is available publicly. And that's what we're dealing with. We're not solving, new ways to protect the new nuclear codes here. We're solving the fact that, unfortunately, it is so easy to impersonate someone or so easy to get access to someone's account that we almost can't trust our digital infrastructure. And that to me is terrifying. But that's what motivates us literally every single day to say, how do we improve account protection on the internet today?
Well, it's a very good cause. It's a foundational issue. I hope you guys keep at it and keep coming up with good ideas, because to date, there's been people on this show whose job it is to do espionage, corporate espionage, and they mimic identities. They're like, that's a trivial hurdle. That's depending on the size of the fish they're trying to catch, that's not even in the hurdle category for them. They're going to go move on from that, right?
We work mainly with large enterprises, and about 3 months ago, I guess since our last episode, we released this sort of out of the box self-service account recovery solution that surrounds whatever you're already using for MFA. So keep your Okta, your Duo, your Microsoft, and we surround it. and put in secure self-service recovery. For us, it's been amazing. I mean, it's actually humbling to see the reaction from the market and how many companies are needing this, deploying this, using this now. But often I speak with companies that are in two extremes. Either they've just had a breach, or they've maybe narrowly avoided a breach that was a social engineering attack, because it seems like everyone is being hit with these attacks right now. Right. Or they proactively or reactively deployed new methods to try and prevent social engineering attacks that had become so high friction that it's just not sustainable. And I was talking to someone last week who their recommendation, their employees are all remote, and they're a very large organization, that on average, the employee has to drive 2 hours to a branch headquarters to be able to recover their account or to verify in person with an IT professional. Like, we had one that was crazy, actually. It was a retail organization, and their method today is someone goes out front in the retail store and waves to the security cameras so that someone at like this headquarters can see if it looks like them and resembles their badge photo. I mean, everyone is sort of inventing their own processes here, because today's methods of doing this are either wildly insecure, or people have tried to put in so much friction to make them more secure that they're not sustainable. And that's just where we fit right in the middle there.
Wow. Well, Aaron, let's switch gears a little bit because we have just a little bit of short time left. You wrote the book Loyal, and last time we didn't get a chance to get your thoughts deeply into why you wrote it, but also the learnings from it. How do you make your customers and employees more loyal? If you could give us some sound bites here.
Yeah, it was a ton of fun working on that book, and really informed it for me was I've been working at Microsoft many years all around the world, and working with large companies and managing teams, and working with companies that had large employee bases. And I moved to China, and in China it was awkward at first because I didn't speak Chinese, and I was the new sort of foreigner guy there, and I was serious leadership role at Microsoft, and I was nervous that people wouldn't want to talk to me. And in fact, a lot of these companies, local Chinese organizations, wanted to talk because they were eager to sort of learn practices that I might have absorbed from working with companies around the world. And so it actually led to a lot of great meetings and conversations and new friendships and business partnerships. But one of the most common things they were asking me is, they said, hey, I've got, call it a factory down the road opening up. They're hiring my employees away, and my customers are going to them because the price is cheaper. At this period that I was in China, it was such a hyper growth, hyper competitive window of time that I was getting these questions very consistently. And so I reflected and said, hey, where have I learned practices where I could offer something useful back? And I went on this journey of meeting with companies that I had known to say who does this well. And one of them actually in the US was Warby Parker. So the eyeglass manufacturer, the public. They were smaller back then. But one of the really profound things they did is they really made their employees feel like their opinions mattered. They felt like their employees felt heard and understood. And they had a variety of techniques, from what they do in their first week on the job to just typical management practices. Their opinion mattered, such that when an employee was then engaging with a customer, and you could sort of watch them even like on the telephones or in the retail stores, those employees were hunting for customer feedback, because they knew that if they got something from a customer, they heard something, they listened, their management would care. And so it pointed out to me there's this virtuous cycle between an employee feeling listened to and then how they engage with customers to also try and be listened. And so if the customer feels listened to, they feel respected. If they feel respected, you can have trust. And that to me was sort of foundational in the philosophy.
Warby Parker, I would have never expected that.
An innovative company doing really cool things. So that was to me this concept of loyal. And loyal is an acronym for listen or you always lose. And the principle was that, when you are deeply listening to people and they feel trusted, they feel respected, then they can feel trusted, then you can have a strong relationship. And that creates loyalty. And loyal employees typically lead to loyal customers.
Yeah. How did they create a culture or what were they doing tactically that made the employees feel that they were being heard?
Yeah, a lot of it was considering that the equivalent of a value, and it being something that they trained their managers on. Their two founders in particular really embodied that. They did things in their all hands, I think it was Monday morning meetings, but once a week for new hires would stand up in the room and they would share sort of a vulnerable story but everyone kind of did it. And the vulnerable story was also a way to sort of build trust because you're opening yourself up to be vulnerable, and everyone kind of does it. And so you say, oh, wow, I belong here. I fit in. My views matter. I'm not, being ostracized by the community. It was these sort of techniques that made people feel like they belonged and like they could be themselves, but that they were listened to. And that sort of became the core. And then, there are historical ways to think about listening. There are forward-looking ways with AI and what listening means. But that became really the basis for the book.
Wow. Was that the culture at Microsoft?
It was just as I was leaving Microsoft. So I did I wrote the book while I was at Microsoft in my final kind of year or two there. And I was living in Beijing again. And unfortunately, at the time, the air pollution was very bad. So I was stuck inside on the weekends. And I was like, all right, what am I doing on the weekends? I said, you know what? I really want to start writing down some of these things I've been learning. And so I used the weekends to sort of write this book, this manuscript. And then towards my end of time at Microsoft, and I was kind of figuring out what to do next, they were very kind. And they said, oh, maybe take a sabbatical and you'll reconsider kind of staying with Microsoft. And I said, great. And I used that time to sort of launch the book. And that was really fun because I met a whole bunch of new folks and did these TED Talks and, a lot of things. And it sort of opened my eyes into new chapters, which ultimately led to sort of my next professional gig too.
That's fantastic.
Thanks.
So let me ask you about China as a tech executive. Are they friend or foe?
I have a lot of great friends in China. I think it's hard. People ask this often. They talk about companies this way. They're like, Microsoft did this, Google did that, Apple did this. What I've learned is actually that is, it might come across that way, but it's actually people behind it. That a bunch of people make up Microsoft, they make up Apple, they make up Google. And typically it's a person or a few people that made a decision or designed a product that way. Or it wasn't the company as an entity that did this, it was the people behind it. And I think the same thing is true for nation states. China's made up of a lot of people, and they're all different types of people. And any country is about, or place is about the people behind it. And I got to know a lot of really great people that I like and respect and still really value. But I think certainly the image of the country and how nations are viewing each other has definitely changed in the years since I've left China. And probably sadly for the worse, because I think there's a lot of innovation that happens in China, like in the US. And I think as a society, as humans, we benefit from sharing knowledge and inventions and patents and intellectual property and research studies and all these things that make sort of the world better. And when you have countries that are sort of separating themselves and purposely putting up barriers, it makes it harder to share and to learn from each other. And I worry that is not a net benefit for society.
See, it's interesting. You're one of the few people that's mentioned that you've seen a lot of innovation happen over there. There's this notion that Asian culture, and this is not Chinese, I mean, Asia, take the continent as a whole and every nation on it. Asian culture generally is very hierarchical, and it is, by that fact, it becomes very anti-innovative because you really shouldn't be asking a lot of questions. It's an area where you do what you're told. And if we want your opinion, we'll ask for it. But you're saying that is not necessarily the case.
Actually, I think it's very accurate in many ways. Asian culture, Asian is very broad, but you're right. I think generally there are hierarchical cultures, particularly in China. But one of the things that I measure as a successful outcome of innovation, actually something else I talk about in the book, is sort of attitude towards failure. And, culturally, is it okay to fail? And so subset Asian culture for a minute. In Japanese culture, for example, it's not really okay to fail.
No.
If you do something that you've disgraced yourself, you've disgraced your family, as a result, startup entrepreneurial activity is quite low. The best jobs are with the stable, very large zaibatsu, large employers. But Chinese culture, coincidentally, actually similar to American in this way, is attitude towards failure is actually okay. In the US, someone does something, they do a startup maybe, and it doesn't work out. I'm like, oh, you must have learned so much. You're going to be great next time. You're probably stronger. And in fact, in America, we love these stories of people that didn't succeed at first and worked hard and got better and made it the next time around. And in China, it was very similar. I experienced it was okay to fail. People were very scrappy. They were very hungry. Like, I'm going to find a way to make this work. And maybe it's not going to work the first many times. Maybe it doesn't meet Western laws or legal requirements, but gosh darn it, I'm going to find a way to make it work. And that's actually a very entrepreneurial attitude, because the attitude towards failure is, okay, it's tolerated. You haven't done something wrong. You've tried. And to me, that's a really important precursor for innovation.
That is very cool. I did not know that, and I certainly learned something new today. That's fantastic. Well, Aaron, we're at the end of this show here. Would anything come? Would you want to plug anything?
No, I love chatting with you. I love the listeners. I'm a big fan of the show. You referenced one or two episodes I feel behind on, so I need to go do my catch up. But in this world of security today, I really, really encourage people to think about these risks of social engineering. Whatever industry you work in, this is not an industry vertical specific thing, whether you're in healthcare or tech or you name it, education, like pick your field today. Yeah, social engineering is very real. If you work at a company, you need to help make sure that that company is taking precautions to keep employee accounts safe and customer accounts safe. As an individual, you need to be aware of this new world that we live in, where people are using new technologies for bad. There are good scenarios for deepfakes we didn't quite cover, but people are often using it for bad, and you could be a victim. And so it is really important to be curious, to be skeptical in a way. The phone calls you get, I often say, what is the channel that it comes across and what is the context? Is this someone you know? Are they saying something a little bit unusual? Is it a one-on-one conversation, or is it a new person in a group chat? You really need to be skeptical, and when in doubt, change the channel or change the context. So maybe if someone texted you on WhatsApp, call them at their home number and say, hey, I got this weird message from you. Does this seem right? Right? We all as individuals need to be skeptical in this sort of fight for authenticity, because in a digital world, it's authenticity, I think, is going to matter more than ever.
You're absolutely right. And that's a great way to end this episode. You're, as always, welcome back, Aaron. Thanks for all the great work that you do. It's very, very interesting. I'm going to go look up some of your patents. Maybe next time around we can try and extract some secret sauce data, because it's intriguing what you said.
Thanks again for having me. Really an honor to be on the show. I'm a big fan.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Well, hey, take care and enjoy the summer.